Good afternoon, everybody. So part two, I want to get into more of a refining path. So far we've blocked in our main key poses. I want to use my existing keys, though, and the interpolation between them to help place my in-betweens. Otherwise, if I just kind of keep it in step mode, if I'm doing small incremental changes, like say between here and here, I do run the risk of things starting to pop a little bit, or maybe not following the proper paths of action. So I am going to probably want to go into my dope sheet, select all of my keys, and just click on the word dope sheet summary. That's going to highlight everything. Right click and just go down to linear tangents. Now remember, auto is the default, but at the moment I just want to keep the ease in and ease out just out of the picture at the moment. So I just want just straight curves going in and out of each of my keyframes. Makes it easy to find where the midpoints are for various things, and it also will allow my feet to stay locked to the ground, which is good. We can always pop back and forward between step mode, though, if you want to check things out. If you're finding it's a little bit confusing with the motion that's going on, just by right-clicking in the timeline and enabling step preview. And you know, this is an alternate, which kind of didn't cross my mind at the time, to just starting in step mode right from the beginning. One other thing, though, since I'm no longer keying in step mode, I am going to probably want to go into my preferences, go under settings, animation, and just set this back to auto and auto, so that every key I make from now on will just be auto keyed. Or you know what, I am in spline, or sorry, linear. Maybe auto and linear might be the better option for now. Now, as I was saying, we could always go into step mode if we wanted to just check to see what it looks like, just for posing and initial timing, just by enabling step preview. So now if I'm playing through this in my timeline, it will go back to kind of a stepped version. Now, it is in kind of a step preview. You can't really scrub between your poses. You will have to turn it off if you want to go back to more of a linear kind of approach. And I think this kind of workflow is what we'll do with our next assignment. It's just, instead of turning on stepped, maybe have it set to linear, but work in a step preview just to see how things are flowing on a pose-to-pose basis. All right, so I'm going to turn that off, though. And next thing I'm going to do is start breaking things down. Now, my first couple poses, I think we're good to not really have to add too much here. And I think we're almost good between here and here. Now there is definitely just a little bit of the hands flicking down, so I might want to maybe just go in and pose that a little bit. They kind of flick down but also move away from the body, so I might want to do that. Maybe angle those thumbs down just a bit. Looks like the curl, the fingers curl, go straight, so out of a finger curl. And that's really just these guys down here, so I might want to just manually rotate those since I've keyed everything. Now, for my in-betweens, I'm not actually going to set a key on everything. I'm just going to actually go in and just key with my auto key things that are different. And what that's going to allow me to do is, if there is kind of a nice flow going through everything, I don't want to break that interpolation by adding in too many excessive keyframes. All right, so now we're going to go into our next key where this foot's coming off the ground. So it's almost like a step. So I'll go roughly in the middle. So let's raise that up a bit. Want to make sure that heel is going to be coming down first. I'm going to shift down just a little bit as well. arms are coming up. I can see those arms raising up just a bit, which means I'm going to probably want to raise these guys too. I wonder if I can do both of them. No, I don't think so. They don't mirror. All right. And definitely we've got the heel coming down. So what I'm going to do in this case, just so my foot stays locked, is I'm going to grab the key, the main pose, and I'm just going to drag it about 3 or 4 frames, maybe 3 frames before. And I'm going to key just that one controller, and I'm just going to add a little bit of a foot roll onto it. And let me just make sure I'm just moving this just a little bit higher here. So I definitely want to try, I know he's got really stubby legs, but I want to try to, let me bring my grease pencil back. Again, I want to try to get that arc happening through here. So he is kind of running. He's not just doing a squash, bouncing ball, squash and stretch. But I want to make sure he is kind of going through that kind of nice kind of arcing path of action. What we don't want is like those linear paths. Which means that this should be back just a little bit more. And I'm almost wondering maybe I could start it just a little bit higher here. I know it's going to be coming down a little bit, which means that this could be just a little bit higher. And again, I'm just going to use, and I got some keys there, I'm just going to use my arrows to go between them. Cool. Now, if I want to check the step preview, I could see how it is without any kind of excessive transitions. Oh no, the problem though is that with only keying the in-betweens, we are going to have to key all of the poses on that. Otherwise, it doesn't quite work out for us here. So let me just go out of step mode here. Yeah, because I really don't want to key everything because it's going to break up the flow a little bit. So you know what, I'm okay just keeping it linear. All right, so I'm going to go into the next major pose, which is probably around here, so about here. So we want to make sure that, this is dragging behind, this is pointing down for sure. Maybe a little bit back. Make sure that knee is angled in properly. Angling this up will give me a little bit of slack here. Cool. I'm going to angle the body just back just a bit. I want it to, this isn't the full stretch pose. I do want to have a little bit more kind of a squash position going into that. So it's a bit snappier. So let me just squish that down just a bit. This might need to be a little bit more in between. All right. And then we get a lot of very kind of close keys here. So this where it gets a bit tricky, but we still need to add in, this foot's going to start rising up, so I want to make sure I'm adding that in. This foot is going to be getting a little bit higher, a little bit more forward. Now it is intersecting that rock, so we just got to be careful with that. Might need to cheat that somehow. Or maybe it's going to come around. There we go. Come around the rock a little bit. Gonna skirt the edge of it. All right, now coming out of this, this foot is definitely going to be coming down first. So let me just push that a little bit more, extreme. I'm gonna rock that heel forward. I know it's not quite like my reference, but I wonder what happens if I do. This back foot, you know, we got to make sure it doesn't go through whatever object it's going through, and we have to also make sure the knees don't look weird. So let me just make sure it's almost like he's jumping over a hurdle a little bit. Got to make sure those hips are angled accordingly. Let's push those hips just a bit more forward here. Right, and I'm gonna add one more, just so that this foot really needs to be, you know, coming down nice and straight. This could be around at this point, so let me just, or maybe somewhere in between. Definitely dragging a little bit behind. And I'm going to push this back just a little bit too. Cool. And we've got just really not a lot of room to add in too much there, so I won't. Now this foot needs to be down by this point. It's really just on the heel at this point, and right here it's off the ground. I can see it's not quite fully on the ground. So what I might want to do is take this key, just transfer it back over to the main pose that I did, and I'm going to just go on bring on that foot roll. There we go. That way it stays nice and locked down. And what can I do to just loosen this up a little bit? And I feel like we could add in just a little bit of stretch here. So let's see if we can do that. Now through here, what we could do is we could cheat a little bit. Maybe have the head raise up and back, just so that there's a little bit of that follow through. And I'm just wondering, we might need to carry that through just a little bit here too. So there's a little bit of that whip, that pendulum, that follow through that we just want to see. And I'm just going to kind of see if we can push that a little bit more through some of this part here. So just up a little bit more here. And could just be a little bit more here forward. So as he kind of as I start standing up, or as the ogre starts standing up, there's just that little bit of extra oomph on the landing. All right, let's do the little steps, and it's actually going a lot faster than I thought. having good keyframes in the beginning really helps out quite a bit. Now, obviously, this shouldn't be up on the heel at this point, so we are going to have to lock that down. So let me just drag that over. It's probably, well, it kind of bounces up and down a bit there, so let me just go about here. Where, oh, that should actually be zeroed out. Oh, it actually kind of goes up again, so that's why that's there. All right, so let's see. So it lands, goes down, and bounces up again. It does actually come up a bit, but maybe not that high. All right, let's do these little baby steps. I already noticed a little bit of an issue here that I'm going to point out to you guys, which is one of the main problems of stepped animation. But before I do, let's kind of go around. So with baby steps like this, we just got to make sure that as these feet come forward, they are lifting off the ground. So let me get rid of that heel roll. It could actually just lift off, bend down. I want to make sure it is coming down heel first. I can see it very subtly heel first, but heel first still none the same. Nonetheless, none the same. I don't know. I'm under the weather, so my sayings are all messed up. Okay. And just make sure that, you know, that's on the ground and not going through the ground. I think that should be good enough. Alright. Now, as that comes off the ground, we have to think about the walk dynamics and what's going on through the body here. So there is going to be a shift of weight over that supporting leg. Our hips can start swinging forward just a little bit. Now, typically for a walk, your hips actually swing down. As that, essentially what's happening is your hips kind of pop in place over your supporting leg, and then kind of gravity takes effect. Because this is coming out of something where you're using a little bit more muscles, so as you use muscles to intentionally move your leg up, then the hips go up with that. So things like marches or walking upstairs or jumps. Now this is kind of a quick step out of the jump, so it's one of those things where would the hips be angled down or up? I'm going to keep them a little bit more neutral just so it doesn't jerk around too much. Cool. And our next pose, same thing. So the one thing you have to remember when doing these little steps, and again, it's all in that baby steps video, just make sure you're shifting your weight when that whatever foot is coming off the ground comes off the ground. So as this comes off the ground, we want to make sure, in this case, our weight is getting shifted over this foot, over on this side. And we just want to make sure that we are bringing it down heel first. And that as it's coming down heel first, you know, that's going to actually be the highest point of the walk. So we want to go up a little bit higher at that point. The lowest point of the walk is technically where this foot's about to come off the ground. So I could just push that down a little bit there. And I could push it up a little bit more, not that much, just about right here. That's going to give me a little bit more weight to the walk. You can see how it disappears as soon as I don't have that there, like after this. Also, you know, I'm getting carried away with these steps. I don't want to have a lot of independent frames, so let's see where I can add in some additional things for for example, like the arm. So we've got this tummy sweep that's about to happen. So I definitely want to maybe include this as part of that step pose. That way I'm still keeping things fairly aligned if I can. So it's going to come up and maybe angle inwards maybe. I know that it's not quite so much there, but that way we get a nice sweep as it kind of does a brushing motion. As these come up, we might want to, you know, maybe bring the shoulders up a little bit. I might want to move the chest back a little bit too, perhaps. I'm going to switch back over to object mode for this, just so that, there we go. Just going to be subtle. And make sure I'm getting a follow through on the way down too, which would be around here. Nice straight arms going around the torso, so it's a bit trickier. We'll probably have to add in another in between. And then this is kind of the steps. I can see that foot's off the ground. So again, as that foot comes off the ground, we're going to angle it down. This is the mid stride, basically. We want to take our center of gravity and shift it over that supporting leg. I'm going to angle the hips up in this case, just because it is having to step over this incline. So in that case, we would get a little bit counter to what you would typically get with a turn and walk. Just want to make sure my weight is centered over the supporting leg too. So go around the character, make sure it doesn't look too far forward or too far back or too far, you know, over on any angle, because, you know, the character would fall down. That would look weird if he's just levitating in place. So you got to make sure you're going around the character. He's got these big feet and stubby little legs, so I just got to be careful, especially with this incline. I'm going to actually angle the entire thing just a little bit. This is coming up at this point too. I can clearly see. Kind of bouncing around a little bit, so let me bring that up. And this is moving away from the body a little bit, so let me do that. Quite far away. The elbow is coming up quite far too, so let me shift that elbow around. You can kind of see that angle there. Something a bit more like that. My head is coming around too. That's a little bit weird, so let's just make sure that cool. And then we're getting to that part where I said, oh, we got to watch out for there's a problem. But before we do, I just got to make sure we do our highs and lows for the walk. So these are other little in between. So again, where that heel kind of starts coming down first, where this gets planted, that's really going to be the high point of the walk. So let's see if we can get this a little bit higher without overstretching that back leg here. I need a, there we go. Without wobbling it too much. It's getting overly wobbly. And I think it's because we're getting close to gimbal, and that's the issue with this foot, and I'll explain that in 1 second. Let me just get rid of this. Delete. Delete key. There we are. Because right now, you know, no gimbal. And then if I rotate that, now you'll notice that there's multiple rings. There's this ring inside the ring. This also moves the entire character around. This is really there to help prevent gimbal from happening when you're rotating through things. So what's gimbal? What's happening with gimbal? I don't think it's really something I've explained too much. I might have covered it a little bit with the bouncing ball. But let me make sure I'm set to object mode for my rotations. And you can switch between world object for translates and rotates just by holding down their related hotkeys. So W left mouse button will bring up the marking menu for translates. E left mouse button will bring up the marking menu for the rotates. And again, I'm just making sure I'm set to object. R will be for scale. All right, and so I do want to shift this over and up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure I'm keying on the same frames as my master or that COG control. So right around here, this is going to be the highest point. So I'm just going to shift that over, maybe rotate it out a little bit. Let's see, does it go through gimbal still? No, it's a nice smooth transition. So gimbal, what's happening with gimbal? Let's look at this foot and let's see what's happening as it rotates forward. See that? So, you know, if I were just posing this with my stepped animation, you know, it looks fine, right? I can't see it. It looks fine because I'm not seeing how it's actually moving from point A to point B. But if we were to actually go in and look at the local translations here, as I start moving this controller around, you know what, instead of object, let me just go to temporarily to gimbal. Don't animate in gimbal mode with the rotations, but just so you can see what's happening, I'm going to switch over to this. And you can see the orientation's changed a little bit. But this is actually the true values of your rotations that's represented in the channel box. Now, ignorance, you know, it's bliss. It's good to sometimes not worry about this stuff until it actually happens. But as I'm rotating this, you can see that two of my handles here now, it looks like the X and Z handles are overlapping one another, right? So as I kind of pass my foot from back to forward, you know, there is a point where this overlap occurs. And this overlap is referred to as gimbal, essentially, because if I wanted to do a pose now where I wanted to kind of angle my foot this way or this way, there's no control literally that I can actually grab and move. Now, if I were to go back to object mode, sure there is. But see what happens over here in my channel box as I rotate this left and right. It's kind of freaking out, right? It's going to get random values across there. It's going to swing wildly between negative and positive values. And it's really this kind of crazy swinging that's taking place that's causing that gimbal to occur. And you can kind of see that it's happening again there as I made some slight modifications. So I do want to, oh, and there's some foot sliding, so let me make sure that I've got this foot locked down. So let me just key it there. There we go. And to lock it down, I'm just doing that trick. I think I mentioned it in class where you can just go on the frame you want, hold down the middle mouse button, drag it over to the frame you want to key over, and then just hit the S key, and then it'll just replace the old frame with the one you just copied it from, basically. It's basically kind of dragging a snapshot of, and it's only going to change whatever you key, so everything else will be the same, which is cool. All right, so how do we get rid of this gimbal? Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to rekey this last pose here, and we just have to be a bit more careful, because I think what happened when I was posing this, I just grabbed this and I shifted it like this. Now, because of that, I'm getting all these random values here. So what I want to do instead is take this key and just rekey over top of the key where this needs to be shifted. And instead of just randomly grabbing in here, which is going to give me gimbal, what I'm going to do probably is actually go back over to gimbal mode, or I'll just be very careful and just grab the one rotation handle. And I'm going to rotate just that handle. Now, it's not exactly where I want it to be because it is going to translate as well. So let me just translate it. And I think that's about right. And I'm still getting a little bit of gimbal, not as much as before. Let's see if we can do a better job at this. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it. Instead of keying everything this time, I'm going to just key the rotations. All right. And what I need to do is I'm going to go back over to gimbal mode so I can see exactly what's happening here. And I'm just going to rotate that Y value. And then I'm going to rotate that Z value. So I am kind of doing a little bit of everything here. Maybe that's too much. It's happening right at gimbal too, that pose. But you can see it's much better. So maybe it doesn't have to even swing around quite so much. Maybe I can keep it a little bit more angled, like so, perhaps. All right, better. I'm going to keep that. So I am going to have to go in now and get out of gimbal mode. I'm not a big fan of it. If I have to use it, I will, but we have to do the in-between here. So that's going to come up a little bit. We're going to drag that down, hoping we don't get too much gimbal out of that. And then we're going to have to make sure that we kind of plant it heel first. Cool. And then we also have to think about our high and low points for this, and that's going to be happening through this. So the low point, again, is where that foot comes off the ground. So that's going to be our lowest point. Start shifting it over a bit, maybe. We can raise that up just a little bit more. So, you know, it's a small step. It doesn't have to be super raised up. Maybe angle those hips a little bit. And this is going to be the highest point where, you know, things are going to be a little bit straighter. Oh, I'm off by a frame. I just want to make sure it's aligned to where I keyed the foot. So let's raise that up a bit. This could come down this could be just a little bit straighter. Gimbal. Yeah, usually it's about maybe 2 to 3 frames. I think I'm going a little bit too much in terms of where that's actually occurring. So I'm going to rekey that. So delete that. And probably a little bit closer to here. It'll just be tricky. It's tricky just getting that right, but let me just break this key here. Such a small little step too. I think I'm just going a little bit overboard. Let me just delete that. Whoops. Delete this guy. Delete. And I'll just keep what I got here. And then just after that, I'm just going to do a little bit of a settling down. Just ever so slight. Maybe shifting of the weight too. Cool. Let's see. I feel like we didn't really do the high and low points for this step here. So I just have to make sure we go up higher right before it comes down. And we have to go a little bit lower here as we're shifting the weight. So I'm just going to go a little bit lower as this foot comes off the ground here. And then we go gimbal. Yeah, gimbal will usually occur through the when you go like 180 degrees from one side to like forward facing to backwards facing. Typically that's where that's going to happen. Let me just get rid of that key that I just keyed there. All right, I think that might be okay. Let's see. Cool. And then I just have to make sure the arms are swinging. So that was a little bit longer, just getting the gimbal taken care of. Okay, so this arm swings a bit more forward here. So let's see where we're at. Well, that's actually, I could probably have it swing a little bit more this way. Just have a little bit of a rotation there. This one could swing just a little bit more this way. Just ever so slight. And, you know, they could swing back a little bit more this way too, perhaps. So I'm just changing my center of gravity just a little bit. I notice it's just a bit forward. Don't forget your greater than or less than keys will help you stay on the existing keyframes. Sometimes if you're dragging things around, you might not go exactly on the same frame, which will cause things to get a little bit jerky, like what I'm. It's a little bit popping around there now at the end. I can see, yeah, with the body. So what I might do is, let's see, where is it? It's going in a little bit. I think it's this key here, which is that down position I did. So let me delete that, and I'll just rekey it. There we go. Cool. All right, so that's kind of the next pass. So that was a good 40 minutes, I think. Let's check the time. Not even 30, half hour. A lot of that was just taking care of the gimbal. I can see there's a little bit of popping on that back arm just as it's coming over the mound. All right, so the next thing I want to do is start pushing the animation. See if we can get a bit more squash and stretch. Push, maybe make things a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more exaggerated. Exaggeration is one of those principles of animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video here, and I'll do a third part where we just kind of go over how we can kind of approach pushing those poses. Maybe adjust the timing too, because it is feeling just a little bit slow through the jump. I think it could be a little bit more fluid too, but we can maybe do that as part of the next step. So let me just stop the video here.